She had a great family and a solid career.
She had just got that promotion.
She had a great relationship with a new boyfriend.
He was perfect for my sister.
But in the blink of an eye, everything changed.
She didn't come home.
It's my daughter. This is not like her. This is out of her character.
Was she carrying a dark secret?
She was so drawn into him like a moth to a flame.
Detectives would soon uncover a complex web of lies.
There was a sex tape that was made.
You have a man in a skeleton mask.
Love is not supposed to hurt. Love is not supposed to take someone's life.
December 14th, 2015. It's a chilly Monday morning in Detroit, Michigan, and downtown is bustling with an energy that would have been unthinkable a few years earlier.
We've been through some tough times, but we're on the uprise.
Detroit is this comeback city right now, and it's been a long time in the making.
While many are out on their morning commute, a sanitation worker in the Brightmoor area is making his rounds.
This area is a residential area. It just consists of homes, single-family homes, some vacant dwellings and vacant lots.
In front of one of these vacant houses, the sanitation worker comes across an oddly placed garbage container. As the worker attempts to roll the can, he notices it is unusually heavy.
It was obvious someone had put something more than just household garbage in there.
When the worker lifts the lid, he's met with a terrifying sight.
There is the body of a deceased female.
The worker immediately runs back to his truck to call 911.
That call comes into me. I alert my team, and we then head out to the location.
When detectives arrive to examine the body, there is little evidence to suggest just how the victim died.
There was no obvious signs of trauma at the time, but we believe we were investigating a homicide.
She obviously did not place herself inside a trash bin.
Who was this woman? Detectives believe they know the answer.
Police had spent the last 3 days searching for a woman named Kajavia Globe.
But no one had heard from her.
Is this Kajavia Globe? And if so, what led to her tragic death? 24-year-old Kajavia Globe was part of a tight-knit family of strong women.
Kajavia was the big sister. You know, she looked out for her sister. She was very overprotected over her sister. I needed that as me being a single parent because I didn't have to worry.
Kajavia was a mother figure. It's great.
We did everything together. Couldn't have tear us apart.
She was my best friend. You could confide into Kajavia about anything.
With the support of her family, Kajavia was thriving in her professional life.
She was working at a telemarketing firm and had just been promoted to project manager.
She was a leader over there, you know, so anyone come on her, she would teach them the software and everything. So she was really excited about it.
She wasn't gonna let anything or anyone prevent her from achieving the goals that she had.
She always wanted to reach for the stars. She was like, oh, I'm gonna grow with this company. I'm gonna advance to the fullest.
Focused on her successful career, Kajavia wasn't looking for love, but couldn't deny the chemistry she had with coworker, 37-year-old John Black.
She was a guy magnet. She was popping, fly. They will always go out on dates. He always took her to nice places, and she just was like, he treats me like a queen.
Why are you so good to me?
Because you deserve it.
After a 6-week romance, the couple had become inseparable, and John asked Kajavia to move in.
He was treating her well. She always talked about him.
She was just happy, full of joy.
However, on the night of December 11th, 2015, Kajavia's sister receives a distressing phone call from John Black.
I had just walked in the house from having dinner.
Hello?
Hello, Adriana? Yes, John. Is Xavier with you?
No, she's not. Why?
He said she didn't make it home.
She's supposed to be here hours ago.
She's not answering her phone?
No, that's why I'm calling you. She's supposed to be here
It's
like
unlike
hours
her
ago.
to not call or to be, answering the phone.
Look, please give me a call once you talk to her.
Will do.
Several hours pass, and there is still no word from Kajavia.
It's completely out of character for her to just go missing.
I'm calling her phone, her sister's calling her phone, everyone is calling her phone.
The following morning, there is still no sign of Kajavia, and her family becomes increasingly alarmed.
We waited till the sun rose, and we went to the police station.
I was sitting at my desk, and a lady and her children come in. She was very frantic, and she was upset.
Hi, I can help you.
It's my daughter. I can't find her.
Okay, how long has she been missing?
Since last night.
With adults, if you hadn't been missing for a certain period of time, then in some cases we don't take the missing report.
Generally speaking, when someone goes missing, police tend to think this could be voluntary, especially if it's an adult.
But is this one of those cases?
There has to be something you can do.
As she spoke to me, I just had this overwhelming sensation, that it's something more to this.
2 days pass, and Kajavia is still missing. That is, until police respond to a 911 call and find a deceased woman matching her description.
My heart sank because I had to make that call.
Hello, Ms. Globe. Yeah, this is Sergeant Ball.
When we received the phone call, and that was it, they found Kajavia's body.
With a new love blossoming and a big promotion at work, 24-year-old Kajavia Globe appeared to have a bright future ahead of her.
By all accounts, Kajavia had everything going for her.
She's sort of living her best life.
But on December 14th, 2015, 2 days after Kajavia was reported missing, her family is devastated to learn that her body has been recovered.
Kajavia's boyfriend, John Black, had called her sister on Friday the 11th and said that she hadn't come home from work.
The family's been through hell. There was no explanation as to why she would suddenly take off, and then suddenly there's a body that's been found.
Now, with her body identified, homicide detectives must piece together what happened to Kajavia Globe and why.
The evidence techs take photos. We collect evidence from the trash can. There were dog hair fibers that were collected. There was also pillow fibers. It looked like the dog may have torn a pillow or a comforter apart. We also collected those fibers.
The can had been found in front of a clearly abandoned house.
They also checked the vacant house. The vacant house was boarded up, and they could see that no one had entered that house.
We conducted a canvass and spoke to the neighbors, asked what they may have saw or heard.
Unfortunately, detectives are unable to find any witnesses. Their hope now is that Kajavia's body might provide the answers they need.
Kajavia's body was transported to the medical examiner to see if they could determine a cause of death.
While they wait for the forensic evidence to be processed, their next step is to talk to Kajavia's grieving family, with the hope they might help generate some leads.
Was she having any trouble with anyone, maybe at work?
They had a surprise party for her promotion at work. And the day of her disappearance,
She didn't appear to have any problems or anything like that at her job.
Well, how are things with her boyfriend? Any problem?
John Black? Not that I noticed. He was the one that told us she was missing.
John was calling us, trying to find out where was Kajavia at.
She was supposed to be here hours ago.
he was very adamant on trying to find Kajavia.
When a woman goes missing, those closest are immediately suspects. The current husband or boyfriend or whomever that happens to be.
I thought that John had something to do with my sister's murder due to the fact that that was the man that was around her at the time.
Anybody else we should look at?
Kajavia's mother gives them the name of another man in her daughter's life, Kajavia's ex, Maxwell Brack.
Max was her first relationship. Max was Kajavia's first everything.
When I initially met Max, it was a good vibe. He was a good guy.
Yes, I like that one.
He made my sister happy, and my sister was always there for him.
You love me, right?
You know I do. You don't want for me.
But Kajavia's family says that despite their relationship being strong, Max started showing a darker side that landed him in prison in 2011.
Maxwell was sentenced for 2 years on a gun charge. And once he was released, their relationship changed between him and Kajavia.
Her sister came to me and was expressing her feelings that she didn't like how Max talked to her sister.
He would demean her. He would talk to her like he was the dad instead of the boyfriend.
According to Kajavia's family, eventually the abuse allegedly became physical, and Kajavia had had enough.
Kajavia had finally left Max because she got tired of the fighting, the arguing, and she finally said, "Mom, I'm gonna leave him." And she left him.
Once that breakup happened, that's when they kind of went their separate ways.
And then she met John. She was just happy, full of joy.
Kajavia's mother says she had reached out to Max to find out if he'd seen Kajavia while she was still missing.
Just because they did have history.
I called Max, and Max was like, he haven't seen her.
Detectives now have two possible suspects, the ex-boyfriend and the new boyfriend.
Now we're looking at two individuals who may have acted or may have been involved in her death.
We'll be in touch.
Detectives assure Kajavia's family they'll find her killer and make interviewing the two men in Kajavia's life their top priority.
We started conducting our interviews, and we went out and spoke to John Black.
Tell us about the day Kajavia went missing.
She went to work, man. They threw her a party. She called me afterwards about 6:30. Said she had to run a few errands, but she never came home after that.
Any problems between you two?
No, man, I thought everything was good. Till I seen that video.
Video? What video?
John explains that when Kajavia went missing, he went through her cloud to see if she had posted any pictures or anything that would indicate where she had been. And that's when he found the video.
He found a video of her and Maxwell Brack having sex.
Detectives instantly suspect John may be hiding some facts about when he found the video, but they also wonder when it was made.
So you found this around the time she was missing?
Yes.
So she was cheating on you?
John Black provided us with that information that he suspected Kajavia was still sleeping with Maxwell Brack.
See that tattoo?
Detectives consider the possibility of a love triangle turned deadly, and that they may be face to face with Kajavia's killer.
Jealousy can be a powerful motive. With Kajavia being involved with both guys, maybe one of them let their jealousy get the best of them.
Detroit homicide detectives are investigating the murder of 24-year-old Kajavia Globe.
Police didn't know how she died, but they had multiple suspects on their radar. One is her ex-boyfriend, Max Brack. The other is her current live-in boyfriend, John Black.
Detectives are questioning John Black at his residence and have just learned Kajavia may have been cheating on him with Max.
John tells detectives he found out about Kajavia seeing Max again because of an explicit video he discovered.
When was the video made?
Recently.
How recent?
John says that he noticed Kajavia's new tattoo in the video, so it couldn't have been more than a few weeks old.
Kajavia has gone back to Max Brack. She's having sex with him. There's a history of violence there. Now they find out that this relationship is once again in play.
Detectives believe the video of Kajavia and Max surfacing so close to her death is not just a coincidence.
John said he found it while trying to help locate Kajavia when she was missing. But police have their doubts.
We thought maybe he was upset by that.
Detectives suggest perhaps John had flown into a jealous rage and killed Kajavia. But John claims that's simply not true.
Listen, I understand I got mad about the video. I love Kajavia. I would do anything for that woman. I seen us having kids. I seen us getting married. I loved her, man.
Detectives ask John if he has an alibi for the night Kajavia disappeared.
I was here, man, calling all of her family, trying to figure out exactly where she was, but she never showed up.
John was the one that called Kajavia's family, but his alibi is still flimsy.
Detectives end their interview with John Black, but he's not cleared from their suspect list just yet.
With any investigation, you have to follow a lead all the way until it ends. We had a couple of individuals who were in the suspect pool. We could not tell whether this was a crime of passion, whether this was a love triangle, whether this was some form of retaliation.
Back at the station, detectives look into the other man in Kajavia's life, Max Brack. They start with his arrest record.
Max had a pretty long rap sheet, including a weapons conviction where he served 2 years in prison.
We learned from Maxwell's criminal history that he had convictions for domestic violence and assault, which kind of piqued our interest.
From what we understood, this person was a violent person.
If Max was as dangerous as his record suggests, why would Kajavia keep seeing him?
She would say she wasn't talking to him anymore. She was done with him, but he will always find a way to pull her back in.
You love me, right?
You know I do.
He knew what to say. He knew what buttons to push to get her to reach back out to him.
After multiple attempts to find Kajavia's ex turn up empty-handed, detectives decide to put a bolo out for Max Brack.
Detectives need to talk to Max and find out what he knows. His name is coming up way too much.
In order to find out who killed Kajavia, detectives need to determine where she was the night of December 11th.
We conducted a financial transaction history for Kajavia's bank records. We found that there were some inaccuracies.
We learned that Kajavia's bank card had been used at a local ATM to withdraw money.
It was a withdrawal for $500, 8:03 p.m. on December the 11th.
That is a lot of money to be withdrawn, and it's right around the time that Kajavia stopped answering her phone.
Detectives waste no time retrieving the security footage from the bank.
We requested video footage for that transaction, and in fact showed Kajavia Globe's vehicle.
However, upon closer inspection, detectives make a troubling discovery.
I think we got it.
Kajavia is nowhere to be seen in the footage.
The video footage actually showed an individual with a mask withdrawing money from the ATM.
You have a man in a skeleton mask withdrawing $500 from Kajavia's account in Kajavia's car and no sign of Kajavia.
Detectives feel confident that whoever accessed that ATM is the one who killed Kajavia.
This guy knew her passcode to her bank account.
Now detectives just have to determine who is the man behind the mask.
Again, there are only two people on detectives' radar who had this kind of access to Kajavia's personal life: John Black and Max Brack.
Detectives investigating the murder of Kajavia Globe have uncovered a startling piece of evidence.
Police recovered surveillance video showing a man wearing a skeleton mask, withdrawing $500 from Kajavia's account, and even driving her car.
Police assumed that whoever was wearing the mask was most likely the one responsible for her death.
Detectives have their suspect list narrowed down to two men, Maxwell Brack and John Black.
Detectives have spoken to Kajavia's current boyfriend, John Black, but now they need to speak with Max Brack.
While police have yet to locate Max Brack, they are able to locate Kajavia's vehicle.
It was seen down in our Brightmoor area in the western side of Detroit.
They found a purse in the back seat. And in the purse were credit cards that belonged to Kajavia.
We had learned that Kajavia had recently been promoted at her job. And when her vehicle was found, there were balloons inside.
But it's not what police find inside the vehicle that makes them take note. It's where the vehicle is found.
Her vehicle was located just a few blocks from where her body was found.
Detectives now have one more piece of the puzzle, but they don't know where she was killed.
While CSIs process Kajavia's car for physical evidence, detectives subpoena phone records and begin combing through them.
Phones are just like a fingerprint in some cases because they tell us where you were, when you were there, how long you stayed.
What they find confirms some of what they already know.
Kajavia had been in frequent contact with Max. There was almost no drop-off in her communication with him.
When the family talked to Max, he stated that he didn't see her nor talk to her.
While the phone records point to the guilt of one of the men in Kajavia's life, they also prove the innocence of another.
The phone record showed that John Black was home the entire night. He was just a concerned boyfriend.
Hey, it's John.
By all accounts, John Black, desperate for answers, he was contacting her family.
I've always been a stand-up guy, so I had to stand my ground because I didn't do anything. And if I have to face these questions, it is what it is. I didn't do that.
In fact, John had hoped to soon marry Kajavia and start a family.
I definitely saw myself marrying Kajavia in the future. It was just a matter of when, you know.
Confident John Black is not their killer, detectives are now ready to move on to their next suspect.
Based on the phone records, we were able to rule him out. So Maxwell is suspect number one on our radar.
Once we figured out that that was his number in her call log and him saying that he have not contacted Kajavia in a long time, at that point I knew that Maxwell had something to do with it.
A closer inspection of Max's records gives detectives further proof that he was likely Kajavia's killer.
Maxwell Brack was in the area where her car was dumped, and he's also where her body was dumped at the time of the crime.
What about the ATM? It pinged in this area right here, around 8 p.m.
That is not enough to get a warrant yet. We still need eyewitnesses that may help.
On December 16th, 2015, 2 days after Kajavia's body was found, detectives receive a surprising phone call.
We were alerted that there was a witness that potentially had information.
Kim Wilson, who lives on the street where Kajavia was found, arrives at the station to give a statement.
Expressed that there was some information that you may have.
I might be able to help you guys.
On December the 14th, she observed an individual move the garbage can from his property to across the street to be picked up.
She tells police that she had seen this guy with this dumpster, and he was sort of pacing back and forth, and then he ends up taking it and put it in front of the abandoned house.
What was it that drew your attention?
Well, it was this guy taking this garbage can across to a vacant house, but he kept going back and forth.
The person who had moved the trash bin to the street and was standing around, and then also moved the trash can to the rear of the vacant home.
She gave us a description and where he lived.
You recognize him if you saw a picture of him?
I might be able to.
Detectives pulled photographs of some random men matching the description she gave, as well as a file photo for Max Brack.
All right. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna just show you a group of pictures.
Okay.
And you just go through them, take as much time as you need, but if you recognize the person in the suit, just let me know, all right?
And she positively identified Maxwell Brack as the person who had moved the trash can where she was found.
Thanks to Kim Wilson's statement, detectives now have enough evidence to arrest Maxwell Brack.
She was very helpful and instrumental in getting the warrant signed for Maxwell Brack.
They run the address given by Kim Wilson, but Max Brack is not listed as a resident. The home belongs to a woman named Cheryl Wolford.
So now detectives have a new name in the mix. Who is this woman, and what is her connection to Max?
Detectives immediately head to the house, prepared to take Max into custody. But when they arrive, there's no sign of him.
Can I help you?
Hello, ma'am. We have a warrant for Maxwell Brack. Is he here?
No. Is this about Kajavia?
Can we come in? So you were aware that her body was found across from here?
It is revealed at that point that her boyfriend is Maxwell Brack.
Could Cheryl Wolford have been involved in Kajavia's murder?
If Kajavia was cheating on John with Max, then that meant Max was cheating on Cheryl with Kajavia.
At this point, she's a possible suspect.
Detroit detectives now have an eyewitness that identified Max Brack as the man who left Kajavia Globe's body in a garbage container.
Maxwell Brack was Kajavia Globe's ex-boyfriend. However, they were still lovers.
Kajavia's body was found across from a house where Max Brack was staying. They have a witness saying he moved her body, but they're still not sure how she died.
Detectives have also found a potential new accomplice in the crime, Max's girlfriend, Cheryl Wolford.
Did you know her?
No. I just knew that her and Max were still hooking up.
How did you find out?
Yeah, I just found a video of the two of them.
The video showed Kajavia having sex with Maxwell Brack.
The fact that she not only knew about Max and Kajavia's relationship, but saw it firsthand, must have been devastating. It's also a red flag for detectives.
We believe that she may have been slighted by that and upset, and due to the proximity of where her body was found and she lived there, she was obviously a suspect to us.
Were you involved in this?
No. I was at work that night. Here's my card. You can check with my supervisor.
And what about Max? Think he's able to do something like this?
Can we search your home?
Yes.
Detectives proceed to search Cheryl's home. Although they don't find obvious signs of a crime scene, they don't leave empty-handed.
We found multiple pieces of evidence that were consistent with evidence that was in the trash container.
Cheryl Walford had a dog, and detectives knew that there were dog hairs as well as fibers from a pillow found with Kajavia's body.
We're gonna have to take a sample of this.
Okay.
Detectives take samples of the hair and fibers for forensic analysis.
With no blood evidence or proof that Cheryl was involved, detectives can't arrest her, but they still need to check her alibi to make sure she's telling the truth.
Upon returning to the station, detectives are met with surprising news. Max Brack has been apprehended.
Maxwell Brack did not come in voluntarily. Our headquarters surveillance tracked him out in Jackson, Michigan, and he was arrested.
Kajavia's family is relieved to hear the news as well.
They told me that we got him, Miss Globe. We have Max. And I just started thanking God.
He was returned back to our Detroit Detention Center, at which point myself and Detective Crosby conducted an interview of Mr. Brack.
When detectives sit down with Max, he doesn't appear to be concerned that he is at the center of a homicide investigation.
He's a guy that loves to hear himself talk. He's clearly a narcissist.
He's boasting about how he's used this woman for that, uses that woman for this. He pretty much kind of painted himself a womanizer.
We know you're still involved with Kajavia Globe. We have a witness who saw you move the body.
We tracked your phone.
So why'd you kill her?
Got bad intel, man. Why would I kill her if I'm still hooking up with her?
He denied. And in most of those denials, our evidence refuted almost everything that he said. He played a victim role during that interview.
I don't know what y'all think happened, but I ain't do it. And I ain't saying nothing else until I speak to my lawyer.
Detectives conclude their interview and send Max back to holding.
He hired a lawyer, and his lawyer stated that he was not going to provide a statement. So we continued on with our investigation and building our case.
After their interview with Max, detectives follow up on Cheryl Wolford's alibi for the night of the murder.
She stated that she was at work that night and didn't get home until well after detectives believed Kajavia was killed.
We confirmed the information that she provided, and that's how we were able to clear her.
With another suspect cleared, and without a strong motive or cause of death, detectives feel the pressure to build their case against Max.
This was the only time that I have been involved with a homicide investigation where the cause of death has been unknown.
However, when the lab results come in for the items found at Cheryl Wolford's home, detectives believe they now have enough evidence to file murder charges.
We found multiple pieces of evidence that were consistent with evidence that was in the trash container. We sent all of that evidence off to our lab, which it was confirmed that those items were a match, even the dog hair.
Detectives submit their case to the prosecutor's office. 2 months after Kajavia Globe's body was found, Max Brack is charged with open murder.
The evidence pointed to Max, but without a cause of death, they could not file first or second-degree murder charges.
With such an unusual case, will the prosecution be able to make the charges stick, or will Max walk away a free man?
Because they didn't have a cause of death, I think he felt confident that he wouldn't be attached to it.
Max was being very arrogant. I feel like he think he had it in a bag, like he fooled everyone, and that he was going to get off.
I hate this man. This man has destroyed my family.
I feel like Kajavia stayed with Max because her heart was so forgiving. She could always forgive and overlook a situation to where she had overlooked Maxwell's abuse, to where she felt that she could possibly get through to him, that he will eventually stop. But it never stopped, and it took her to her death.
In August of 2016, prosecutors prepared their case against Max Brack for the murder of Kajavia Globe. But Max maintains his innocence.
Max claimed that even though he and Kajavia were still lovers, that didn't mean he killed her.
He said they had this sexual relationship, and that's all it was.
Maxwell told us he would have no reason to hurt or kill Kajavia.
Despite the fact that he was engaged in a sexual relationship with Kajavia at the time of her death, despite the fact that her body's found across the street from where he's living, he says he has nothing to do with this.
When Max's trial begins in late August, emotions run high as his defense begins to poke holes in the prosecution's case.
Even with all the evidence linking Max to Kajavia's body, not knowing how she died really jeopardized the case.
They didn't have a cause of death.
Prosecutors also lack a clear-cut motive.
Why did this happen? Why would he kill someone he claimed to love? And we can't ask Kajavia what happened. And Max Brack is never going to admit to what happened.
I believe trying to determine the motive was one of the hardest things in this case, but everything just kept drawing them back together in this combustible relationship that eventually exploded.
Prosecutors and Kajavia's family have a theory about what happened the night Kajavia died.
The prosecution believed that Kajavia went to see Max at Cheryl's home while Cheryl was at work. They assert that Kajavia went there to end the relationship. That's when Max flew into a rage and killed her.
I don't want to do this anymore.
You said that once before already.
We're done, Max. Stop! Stop! Stop it! Get off me! Shut up.
He knew that he couldn't control her. He couldn't get her to just pull up whenever he said he needed something. She wasn't at his beck and call no more.
It was, if I can't have you, nobody can.
Despite the holes in the prosecution's case, Max's demeanor in court may have done the most damage to his defense.
When he walked into the courtroom, he kind of was just arrogant. He had this look on his face like he knew that he was innocent and he didn't have anything to do with it. He honestly thought that he was clear.
On August 31st of 2016, the jury returns their verdict.
In an open murder trial, the jury can convict on a charge that fits the evidence presented. In this case, there wasn't enough for first degree, but second-degree murder still carries substantial prison time.
They found Max guilty of second-degree murder.
It's the news Kajavia Globe's family has been waiting for.
I was a sigh of relief. We are going to get justice for my sister.
At sentencing, the presiding judge makes sure Kajavia's family gets exactly that.
The judge gave him 70 years to 100 years behind bars.
He basically showed no emotion, and I believe that played a big role in why he was found guilty by the jury. And also, during the sentencing, he chuckled at the judge's sentencing.
And the last 10 years of that 70-year sentence, that's for the smile.
That was very powerful to see him just kind of laugh it off.
He will be there for the rest of his life.
It's just a sad situation. Both lives are done. It's like he's gonna sit in prison the rest of his life. That's not a life.
Before Max is taken away, Kajavia's mother makes a powerful statement to the court.
He knew I didn't like him. When he put my baby in that dumpster, that was something to me, because I always told him in his face he was trash. I hate this man. This man has destroyed my family. This man has took something from me that he can never give it back. Never.
It was me and my 4 daughters. No. And we don't have that in our life no more.
I still have a broken heart, and I never will learn how to cope with this, because this is something that eats at me all the time.
Maybe one day he can say and own up to it that he did do that, but I don't really want to hear his answer, because inevitably he still took her life for whatever selfish reason you wanted to do that for.
You never get closure. You just had to learn to live, to deal with it. That's it.
As for John Black, the man who hoped to one day marry Kajavia, he too must find a way to carry on.
I gotta put the pieces back together. But it's not really about me in this situation. It's more about her family.
However, even in their grief, Kajavia's family hopes that her story will save others from the same tragic fate.
No one should belittle you. No one should make you feel less than them. And if you're going through it, get away, get out. Leave and don't look back. Because somebody loves you, they're not going to hurt you. They're going to protect you. Period.
Injured woman as Denise Miller. They quickly realized that Denise and her boyfriend, a 37-year-old police officer named Wayne Irby, had been reported missing by their families just 24 hours earlier. Officer Wayne Irby was a dedicated 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department. He was widely respected by his colleagues, known for his warm demeanor, his commitment to community policing, and his professional pride. He was not a man to miss his scheduled shifts, and when he failed to report for his 6 o'clock morning briefing on December 10th, his fellow officers immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Wayne and Denise had been in a relationship for approximately 1 year. Denise, a 36-year-old divorced mother of 2 children, Whitney and Walter, had moved to Little Elm to seek a fresh start after her divorce. She was a successful professional who managed her finances well, eventually purchasing a beautiful suburban home. She had met Wayne when he noticed her garage door was left open while on patrol and stopped to offer a friendly warning. The relationship had been passionate, but increasingly volatile. Denise struggled with deep-seated trust issues and jealousy, frequently accusing Wayne of utilizing his position on the police force to interact inappropriately with other women. In late 2003, Denise had filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne following a physical confrontation at his rental home, though she subsequently withdrew the allegation, admitting she had fabricated the details. In a moment of anger, despite their difficulties, the couple had purchased a home together in 2004. However, the domestic friction continued, leading Wayne to move into a separate rental property across town. They had briefly reconciled when Denise unexpectedly lost her job, but the underlying tensions remained unresolved. On the day prior to his disappearance, Wayne had confided in his partner, Jerry Walker, that he had decided to terminate the relationship permanently and move his belongings out of the shared residence. Following the discovery of Denise in the Gainesville motel, investigators in Little Elm focused their search on Wayne's rental home. Officer Jerry Walker and another deputy obtained a key and entered the residence. In the kitchen, they discovered Wayne's personal effects, including his mobile phone and his utility pack, which he never traveled without. Down the hallway, they made a devastating discovery. Officer Wayne Irby lay deceased on the floor, the victim of a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The nature of the wound indicated that Wayne had been shot from behind, suggesting he was caught entirely off guard. There were no signs of a physical struggle within the residence, and Wayne's duty weapon was missing from his holster, which remained hung in his closet. As forensic specialists processed the homicide scene, they discovered a handwritten note on the kitchen island. The note, written by Denise, read, "I am sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." This discovery, combined with another highly emotional letter found at Denise's personal residence, strongly suggested a planned murder-suicide. It appeared that Denise, unable to accept Wayne's decision to leave her, had taken his life and departed with the intention of ending her own. At the Gainesville hotel room, crime scene investigators recovered Wayne's missing .40 caliber service pistol. Interestingly, the weapon had jammed. A cartridge had been inserted into the chamber backward, rendering the firearm inoperable. Investigators hypothesized that Denise had initially attempted to utilize Wayne's service weapon to end her life, but when the firearm jammed, she utilized a .25 caliber handgun belonging to her stepfather to shoot herself in the head. Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy was dispatched to the hospital to interview Denise. Once her condition had stabilized, the trauma to her brain had resulted in partial paralysis, blindness in one eye, and significant cognitive impairment. During the audio-recorded interview, Denise appeared highly disoriented. While she could recall basic details about her life and her relationship with Wayne, she claimed to have absolutely no memory of the shooting or her subsequent actions. When informed that Wayne was deceased, she expressed genuine shock and denial. Medical professionals noted that such hysterical amnesia is not uncommon following severe traumatic brain injury, as the mind often blocks out memories of extreme trauma to protect its own sanity. However, investigators had to consider the possibility that Denise was fabricating the memory loss to avoid prosecution. The ballistic analysis of the projectile recovered from Wayne's remains confirmed that he had been killed with the same .25 caliber handgun Denise used in her suicide attempt. The heavy trigger pull of the weapon, which required nearly 5 pounds of pressure, disproved any defense claims that the firearm had discharged accidentally during a physical struggle. Denise Miller was formally charged with first-degree murder. Following 18 months of intensive physical rehabilitation and cognitive therapy, she was declared legally competent to stand trial. The trial of the state of Texas versus Denise Miller commenced on July 10, 2006. Denise appeared in the courtroom in a wheelchair, frail and visibly diminished by her self-inflicted injuries. The defense argued that the shooting had been a tragic accident, presenting a line from her third suicide note found in the hotel room, which stated she had not intended to hurt him and had panicked after the firearm discharged. The prosecution countered by presenting the meticulous evidence of preparation. Denise had traveled to Wayne's home armed with a loaded weapon. She had shot him directly in the back of the head, made no attempt to summon medical assistance, authored a detailed confession note, and fled the scene to execute her own suicide plan. The jury deliberated for less than 1 hour before returning a verdict of guilty. Denise Miller was sentenced to 62 years of confinement in state prison, while she was spared the death penalty due to her severe physical disabilities. The sentence ensured she would spend the remainder of her life behind bars. The tragedy left 2 families devastated. The children of Denise Miller were left to grow up without the guidance of their mother, while the colleagues and family of Officer Wayne Irby mourned the loss of a dedicated public servant, whose life was taken by the very person he had sworn to protect. The 3 chronicles stand as a sobering reminder of the destructive nature of possessiveness, jealousy, and the fragile illusions of love that, when twisted by obsession, can lead to the darkest corners of the human experience. Through the meticulous dedication of law enforcement and the pursuit of scientific truth, justice was ultimately secured, honoring the memories of those whose voices were tragically silenced. The human heart is a complex and often turbulent landscape, capable of the loftiest heights of devotion and, conversely, the most baffling descents into possessiveness, jealousy, and malice. When these darker currents take hold, they frequently leave behind a trail of devastation that task forces and local investigators must meticulously piece together. Through careful logical deduction, scientific analysis, and an unwavering commitment to the communities they serve, law enforcement officers strive to bring clarity to situations shrouded in mystery and deceit. The 3 accounts that follow illustrate the arduous path from tragedy to truth, highlighting the resilience of those left behind and the quiet triumph of justice. The first account begins in the quiet, close-knit landscapes of northeastern Texas, where the boundaries between public duty and private torment became tragically blurred. December 11th, 2004, began as a tranquil, shivering evening in the city of Gainesville, Texas, the small municipality situated not far from the Oklahoma border was settled into its winter routine. However, shortly after, for in the morning, the silence inside a local hotel was shattered. The night manager on duty received an alarming, disoriented call from one of the guest rooms. The voice on the other end was slurred, weak, and filled with a distress that could not be easily ignored. Sensing that something was deeply amiss, the manager hurried down the carpeted hallway to investigate. He reached the door of room 104 and knocked firmly. He called out, asking if the occupant was safe, but received no coherent response. The deadbolt was engaged from the inside, preventing his master key from turning. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the manager summoned the maintenance worker, who used his tools to force the lock and open the door. Stepping into the darkened, chilly room, the 2 men made a startling discovery. Lying on the floor, crumpled in a near-fetal position, was a lone woman. The room was in complete disarray, with blankets dragged to the floor and personal items scattered. As they drew closer, they saw that she was bleeding profusely from a gunshot wound to her head, just above her eye, resting on the carpet. Beside her was a small, silver .25 caliber handgun. The hotel manager immediately dialed 911. Within minutes, the local police department and emergency medical technicians arrived at the scene. The atmosphere was chaotic as first responders focused on stabilizing the woman, whose injuries were critical. Her breathing was shallow, and she seemed to exist in a profound daze, unable to explain how she had come to be in such a state. An officer radioed dispatch, requesting a swift transport to a nearby trauma center, noting that a female victim had sustained a severe gunshot wound to the head. As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, investigators began the grim task of processing the room. On the tables and counters, they found bottles of alcohol and boxes of over-the-counter sleeping medication. Initially, the scene presented two distinct possibilities. Either the woman had attempted to take her own life, or an assailant had inflicted the wound and fled before the manager arrived. The puzzle grew significantly more complex when the local authorities ran the woman's identification. Her name was Denise Miller. Just 24 hours earlier, both she and her boyfriend, a respected officer with the Little Elm Police Department named Wayne Irby, had been reported missing. Officer Irby had failed to report for his scheduled 6 in the morning shift on December 10th, an absence that immediately raised red flags among his colleagues. Wayne was a reliable, dedicated 6-year veteran of the force who took immense pride in his work. For him to miss a shift without calling was unprecedented. The realization that both Wayne and Denise had vanished simultaneously sent a tremor of apprehension through the law enforcement community of Little Elm. To understand how these two lives converged in such a tragic manner, investigators had to reconstruct the preceding years of their relationship. Denise Swall had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, where classmates remembered her as a popular, bubbly, and personable young woman. She had married her college sweetheart at the age of 22 and gave birth to 2 children, Whitney and Walter. However, by 1995, the marriage had deteriorated, resulting in a divorce. Seeking a fresh start for herself and her children, Denise, then 36 years old, relocated to the growing suburb of Little Elm, Texas. She secured a successful position with a local liquor distributor, managed her finances prudently, and built a beautiful house. Despite her professional achievements, she yearned for a partner to share her life. In 2003, that desire seemed to be met when Officer Wayne Irby knocked on her door to advise her that her garage door had been left open. Noting a recent spate of neighborhood thefts, the brief encounter left an impression on both of them. Wayne was a tall, athletic, and charismatic man who was well liked on his beat. It was not long before he returned to ask her out on a date. The chemistry was immediate, and they quickly became an exclusive couple. Wayne, a divorced father himself, bonded warmly with Denise's children, and for a time, they mirrored a happy family. However, beneath the polished surface of their romance, trust issues began to fester. Wayne was naturally outgoing and friendly, qualities that Denise increasingly interpreted as infidelity. She frequently confronted him about his interactions with other women on his beat. Although Wayne defended his fidelity, the accusations created a persistent strain. In an attempt to solidify their commitment, they purchased a house together in 2004. Yet, cohabitation did not ease the tension. The arguments escalated, leading Wayne to move into a separate rental home across town. When Denise lost her job in November of that year, Wayne felt a wave of compassion and did not want her or her children to lose their home. He agreed to reconcile and try to work through their difficulties. Tragically, this gesture of goodwill would lead to a fatal encounter. On the morning of December 10th, when Wayne failed to appear at the police station, his partner, Jerry Walker, and fellow officer, Cynthia Medrano, grew increasingly anxious. Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence Wayne shared with Denise. The house was dark, with no vehicles in the driveway and the doors locked. Investigators then located Denise's teenage children, who reported that they had not seen their mother or Wayne in nearly 24 hours. Whitney, Denise's daughter, recalled a highly unusual telephone call from her mother around midnight, in which Denise claimed she was running errands and repeatedly whispered that she loved them. It was a departure from her typical demeanor, leaving the children uneasy. Determined to find his partner, Detective Jerry Walker, accompanied by Officer James Wynn, decided to search the rental property Wayne had recently vacated. Utilizing a key provided by the landlord, they entered the quiet house. On the kitchen counter, they discovered Wayne's fanny pack and his cellular phone, items he rarely went anywhere without. Proceeding down the hallway, Officer Wynn peered around a corner and suddenly stopped, instructing Detective Walker to remain where he was. Lying on the floor was the lifeless body of Officer Wayne Irby. He had been shot a single time in the exact center of the back of his head. The nature of the wound strongly suggested he had been caught entirely off guard, with no signs of a struggle or defensive actions. The discovery transformed the search from a missing persons case into a homicide investigation. With Wayne dead and Denise nowhere to be found, authorities feared for her safety, wondering if a single assailant had targeted them both. However, a search of the home Denise and Wayne shared revealed a handwriting sample that shifted the focus of the inquiry. In the master bedroom, investigators found a note written by Denise, which spoke of weariness, pain, and a desire to end her suffering. Furthermore, Wayne's duty uniform was hanging in his closet, but his service weapon, a .40 caliber pistol, was missing from its holster. The presence of a potential suicide note and a missing weapon led investigators to consider a darker hypothesis that Denise had taken Wayne's life and might be planning to take her own. A deeper exploration into their past revealed a previous domestic disturbance in December 2003, Denise had filed a complaint against Wayne, alleging assault after she discovered another woman's belongings at his rental home. A physical confrontation had occurred, leaving Wayne with scratches and a black eye, though Denise later withdrew her complaint, admitting she had initiated the struggle in a fit of anger. Friends of Wayne informed detectives that on December 9th, Wayne had finally decided to end the relationship permanently, packed his belongings, and told Denise he was leaving for good. The motive began to crystallize. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home, crime scene investigators discovered a second handwritten note from Denise. It read, "I'm sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." This discoverable confession suggested a double tragedy had occurred, prompting an all-points bulletin for Denise and her vehicle. That bulletin yielded results when the Gainesville hotel room was breached on the morning of December 11th. Inside the room where Denise lay injured, investigators found Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon. Upon closer inspection, they realized she had attempted to use it first, but had loaded a cartridge into the magazine backward, causing the mechanism to jam. She had then turned to her stepfather's .25 caliber handgun to shoot herself. Additionally, a third, much longer note was found in her hotel room. Among paragraphs of remorse, there was a single line asserting that the shooting of Wayne had been an accident and that she had panicked and fled. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy attempted to interview Denise at her hospital bedside, he was met with a profound obstacle. The bullet lodged in her brain had caused severe trauma, resulting in partial paralysis, blindness in one eye, and significant amnesia. When told that Wayne was dead, she appeared genuinely shocked, repeating that she had no memory of the event whatsoever. While some investigators wondered if this memory loss was a convenient shield against prosecution, medical personnel confirmed that the physical damage to her brain was consistent with cognitive and memory deficits. Regardless of her lack of recollection, the physical evidence spoke clearly. Ballistics confirmed that the .25 caliber bullet recovered from Wayne's head had been fired from the very same gun Denise used to shoot herself. The weapon was registered to her stepfather, proving she had brought it with her to Wayne's house on the night of the murder. On July 10, 2006, the trial of the state of Texas versus Denise Miller began. The prosecution urged the jury not to let Denise's frail, wheelchair-bound appearance distract them from the gravity of her actions. They argued that her possession of a foreign weapon indicated premeditation. Furthermore, forensic testing of the handgun's trigger revealed it required nearly 5 pounds of pressure to discharge, directly contradicting the defense's theory of an accidental shooting. The prosecution also highlighted her actions after the shot was fired. Instead of summoning emergency medical services, she wrote a confession, stole Wayne's service weapon, and fled the county. After less than 1 hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. At her sentencing, despite the tragic nature of her physical state, she was spared the death penalty and sentenced to 62 years in prison, a term that essentially ensured she would spend the remainder of her life behind bars. The case stood as a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy and the absolute finality of violence. As the community of Little Elm sought to heal from the loss of Officer Irby, another tragedy was unfolding 3 years later in the bustling metropolitan area of Houston, Texas, where a young woman's promising academic journey was cut short by a controlling partner. In March of 2007, 19-year-old Tanisha Stewart was a bright and shining star to her family, having grown up in one of Houston's more challenging neighborhoods and losing her father during her childhood. Tanisha had refused to let her circumstances define her. She excelled academically, earning a prestigious scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. Her family harbored grand expectations for her future, knowing her intellect and determination would carry her far. In May of 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, 17-year-old Tanisha met 25-year-old Timothy Shepard. Despite the 8-year age difference, Timothy's persistent attention eventually won her over, and they began dating. He made an effort to ingratiate himself with her mother and siblings, helping with household chores and repairs, earning their trust and acceptance. However, when Tanisha relocated to the university campus, nearly 2 hours away from Houston, the dynamics of their relationship shifted away from the familiar confines of her hometown. Tanisha blossomed, embracing her independence, making new friends, and broadening her horizons. Timothy found this newfound autonomy difficult to accept. He grew increasingly possessive, frequently calling her and even traveling to the university campus unannounced to monitor her activities. During her spring break in March of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston to spend time with her family and friends. While she saw Timothy briefly, she also spent time with a young man named Mark Marks, whom she had met at college. Tanisha's sister, Gayla, noticed a growing tension in Tanisha, who seemed increasingly eager to move past her relationship with Timothy. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Gayla returned home from a church service to a frantic call from her mother. Tanisha had failed to appear for a planned concert with her friends, and her cellular phone was going directly to voicemail. It was entirely uncharacteristic of Tanisha to vanish without communicating with her family. Gayla immediately contacted Timothy, who claimed he had not seen Tanisha since Thursday morning. He asserted that they had returned to his apartment early that day, where Tanisha received a call from Mark Marks. Timothy admitted they had argued about the call and claimed that Tanisha had walked out of his apartment on foot later that morning, never to be seen by him again. On Monday, March 19th, the family filed a formal missing persons report. Detectives brought Timothy in for questioning, where he maintained his story. During an intensive interview, he voluntarily provided written consent for investigators to search his apartment, which revealed no immediate signs of a struggle or foul play. Lacking sufficient evidence to detain him, the police returned his keys and allowed him to leave. The investigation then turned to Mark Marks. Detectives wondered if a romantic rivalry had turned violent. However, Mark cooperated fully with the authorities, explaining that Tanisha had expressed a desire to end her relationship with Timothy to pursue a future with him. Mark provided a verifiable alibi, proving he was at a social gathering on South Padre Island at the time of her disappearance, completely exonerating him. As the days passed with no sign of Tanisha, the search grew more desperate. A neighbor near Timothy's apartment complex contacted dispatch to report hearing what sounded like gunshots near the wood line on the night Tanisha went missing. Search teams, accompanied by canine units, combed the dense woods but discovered only the remains of a deceased animal. However, during their canvass of the apartment complex, detectives encountered several residents who reported highly unusual behavior by Timothy Shepard in the days following Tanisha's disappearance. They noted that he had been operating 2 outdoor grills continuously over the weekend, producing an immense volume of thick, dark smoke that prompted neighbors to contact the fire department. When firefighters had arrived to address the smoke hazard, Timothy claimed he was preparing food for a massive church picnic of nearly 200 people. One firefighter noted seeing a substantial quantity of raw meat soaking in a bathtub inside the apartment. Furthermore, another neighbor reported seeing Timothy scrubbing his concrete patio with a massive quantity of industrial bleach, the fumes of which were strong enough to irritate the eyes of passers-by. Frustrated by the lack of progress and convinced that Timothy was hiding the truth, Tanisha's family reached out to Quannell X, a well-known community activist in Houston who had a reputation for facilitating communication between law enforcement and citizens. Interestingly, Timothy's family had also contacted Quannell, seeking to protect Timothy from what they perceived as unfair police scrutiny. Quannell arranged a private meeting with Timothy inside his apartment. Sensing Timothy's extreme distress, Quannell led him into the bathroom to speak privately. When confronted directly about Tanisha's fate, Timothy broke down. He confessed that when Tanisha had refused to discuss her relationship with Mark and attempted to leave the apartment, he flew into a violent rage and strangled her to death. He then claimed he had carried her body to a commercial dumpster behind the apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller, and together with Timothy, they drove to the designated dumpster. However, upon arrival, they discovered the bin was entirely empty. The waste management company confirmed that the dumpster had been emptied and its contents transported to a massive regional landfill. Given the scale of the facility, investigators realized that recovering her remains would be nearly impossible, a reality that Tanisha's grief-stricken family accepted, asking authorities not to expend public funds on a futile search. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to legal counsel and recanted his confession. To build a prosecutable case without a body, forensic teams returned to his apartment with specialized equipment. Their meticulous search of the kitchen revealed microscopic bone fragments and a portion of tooth enamel lodged within the garbage disposal. Forensic analysis confirmed the enamel belonged to Tanisha. Additionally, charred bone fragments were recovered from the ashes of the outdoor grill. The evidence painted a horrific picture of dismemberment and incineration, leading a grand jury to indict Timothy Shepard for murder. On September 29, 2008, the trial commenced. The defense argued that, without a body, the prosecution's case was purely circumstantial. However, the forensic evidence of the tooth enamel, coupled with Quanell's testimony regarding the confession, proved insurmountable. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand, claiming he had acted in self-defense after Tanisha allegedly attacked him with a knife, causing him to black out. This claim was quickly dismantled during cross-examination when the prosecutor asked him to clarify what he did with her remains. In a chilling moment of clarity, Timothy corrected the prosecutor, stating he had not used a standard barbecue pit, but had instead utilized a commercial smoker. The jury rejected his claim of self-defense, finding him guilty of murder and sentencing him to 99 years in prison. The verdict brought a measure of peace to Tanisha's family, ensuring that a dangerous individual would remain removed from society, though the loss of such a bright young mind left an permanent void in their lives. While the investigators in Houston were concluding their pursuit of justice, a similarly complex and heartbreaking case arose in Raleigh, North Carolina, where a young woman's life was taken not by a partner, but by an individual driven by a pathological tertiary obsession. On the cold winter morning of January 30th, 2008, commuters traveling along Interstate 540 in Raleigh, North Carolina, noticed a figure lying in the grass beside the shoulder of the road. First, responders arrived to find a young woman who had been brutally stabbed multiple times about her face, neck, and torso. There was no ID on her person, and no weapon was found nearby. Approximately half a mile down the highway, state troopers located an abandoned white sedan with its hazard lights flashing. As traffic backed up, a driver named Darren Curtis passed the crime scene and recognized the vehicle as belonging to his wife, 21-year-old Latrice Curtis. Panicked, Darren returned to the scene, where detectives confirmed his worst fears. Latrice was a business administration student at North Carolina Central University who had been married to Darren for just 9 months. Her family remembered her as a vibrant, goal-oriented young woman who excelled in her studies. The sheer brutality of the crime, featuring over 40 stab wounds, suggested a deep, personal animosity rather than a random act of highway violence. Detectives initially focused their attention on Darren. They examined his hands and arms for defensive wounds, but found nothing. A search of the couple's apartment, and Darren's vehicle revealed no trace of blood or evidence of a struggle. Darren explained that Latrice had called him around 10 the previous evening to say she was running late from her classes and planned to get some food. He had gone to sleep around 11:30 and assumed she had stayed at her mother's house when she did not return. An autopsy of Latrice's body revealed she had engaged in consensual sexual activity shortly before her death, as evidenced by a condom found internally. This discovery shifted the direction of the inquiry. Investigators subpoenaed Latrice's cellular phone records and discovered a flurry of late-night calls exchanged with a classmate named Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent athlete on the university's basketball team with aspirations of playing professionally. When brought in for questioning, Stephen initially claimed they were merely study partners. However, when presented with the autopsy findings, he admitted they had been engaged in a passionate, secretive affair. He explained that on the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his residence. During their encounter, the condom became lodged, and they were unable to retrieve it. Latrice left his home around 10 in the evening, and she subsequently called him multiple times, expressing panic over a potential pregnancy. Stephen provided an alibi, claiming he had visited his girlfriend, Velma Newton, immediately after Latrice left, remaining there until approximately 1 in the morning. Velma confirmed his timeline but added a curious detail. Both she and Stephen had recently received anonymous, highly threatening telephone calls from a blocked number, demanding they end their relationship. Furthermore, someone had recently slashed all 4 tires on Stephen's vehicle. To verify Stephen's living arrangements, detectives interviewed his roommate, Pastor Robert Reeves, known in the community as a charismatic minister and motivational speaker. The 43-year-old pastor had allowed Stephen to rent a room in his home for a modest fee. Reeves confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen on the night of the murder, claiming he saw her car parked outside before he left for an evening church service at 8:15. However, when detectives interviewed Reeves' sister, who attended the same church, she stated she had not seen her brother at the service. This discrepancy, combined with visible scratches on the pastor's hands and arms, aroused suspicion. Reeves claimed he had sustained the scratches while moving a desk with Stephen, but Stephen denied that any such incident had occurred. The breakthrough in the case came from State Trooper Isaac Cooper, who had been patrolling Interstate 540 on the night of the murder. Cooper recalled seeing a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights flashing around 1:30 in the morning. He had run the license plate, which returned registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Stephen Randolph subsequently informed detectives of a highly inappropriate interaction in which Pastor Reeves had made unsolicited sexual advances toward him, even offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen had rejected the advances, after which the anonymous threatening calls and the tire slashing incident began. Phone records subsequently proved that the blocked, threatening calls to Stephen and Velma had originated from Pastor Reeves' cellular phone. The motive became Terrifyingly clear, Reeves had developed a pathological obsession with his young roommate. He viewed any woman who secured Stephen's affection as a direct threat. Forensic teams analyzed the interior of Latrice's abandoned vehicle and discovered a mixture of DNA on the steering wheel. While Stephen's DNA was present, a significant profile matched Pastor Robert Reeves. On February 2, 2008, authorities arrested Pastor Robert Reeves and charged him with first-degree murder. The revelation sent shockwaves through his congregation and the broader religious community, many of whom found it impossible to reconcile the charismatic minister with the allegations of stalking and murder. During the trial in September 2009, the prosecution argued that Reeves had followed Latrice from his home on the night of the murder. He had used his vehicle to signal her to pull over on the shoulder of Interstate 540, where he confronted her and carried out the savage attack in a fit of jealous rage, hoping that by removing her from Stephen's life, he might clear a path for his own desires. The defense attempted to argue that the DNA under Latrice's fingernails matched Stephen Randolph, suggesting the athlete was the true perpetrator. However, the prosecution successfully demonstrated that this genetic material was the result of their consensual intimate encounter earlier that evening. The presence of Reeves' DNA in her car, the scratches on his arms, his false alibi, and the state trooper's identification of his vehicle at the scene proved decisive. On October 9, 2009, the jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. These three cases, though distinct in their geography and participants, share a common thread: the tragic disruption of human life by individuals who sought to control, possess, or destroy what they could not have. In each instance, it was the methodical, logical, and tireless work of law enforcement officers and forensic specialists that peeled back the layers of deception to expose the truth. While no judicial outcome can restore the lives of Wayne Irby, Tanisha Stewart, or Latrice Curtis, the successful prosecution of their killers stands as a testament to the enduring pursuit of justice and the resilience of the communities that honor their memory. Chapter 1: The Star That Burned Too Bright. The highway stretching north of Houston, Texas, is often a blur of gray concrete and distant pine trees, a road designed for transitions rather than destinations. On the late afternoon of Wednesday, March 21, 2007, at approximately 5:30, this ordinary stretch of road became the setting for a quiet, desperate journey. Investigator Sidney Miller sat behind the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the horizon, while his partner watched the passing road signs. In the back seat sat two men whose presence in a police vehicle signaled that the investigation had reached a critical threshold. One was a well-known community advocate, a man accustomed to navigating the delicate intersections of public grief and private despair. Beside him sat Timothy Shepard, a 25-year-old man whose nervous posture betrayed a deep internal unraveling. Under their quiet instructions, the vehicle exited the main highway and turned into a sprawling apartment complex. The pavement was cracked, and the late afternoon sun cast long, thin shadows across the brick facades. Timothy pointed toward the back of the development, his finger trembling slightly as he indicated a common parking area. There, sitting quietly in the humid Texas air, was a green metal garbage dumpster. Investigator Miller parked the car and stepped out into the quiet evening. The air carried the faint, mundane sense of a residential suburb cooking food, laundry detergent, and cut grass. The detectives approached the dumpster, the metal hinges creaking loudly as they lifted the heavy lid. They peered inside, expecting to find the tragic conclusion to a search that had captivated the community for nearly a week. But the dumpster was empty. Its dark metal interior held nothing but a few scraps of windblown paper and the lingering scent of industrial disinfectant. The detective turned to the young man, a quiet question hanging in the air. Was this a cruel misdirection, or was it merely another empty promise in a case that had already seen too many? At that moment, the investigators did not know where the young woman was, nor did they truly understand the dark path that had brought them to this vacant corner of Houston. To understand the disappearance of 19-year-old Tanisha Stewart, one must look beyond the sterile reports of the police files and examine the life of a young woman who had spent her brief years defying the limitations of her environment. Born into a large, vibrant family of 6 children, Tanisha grew up in one of the more challenging neighborhoods of Houston. Her childhood was marked by early loss. Her father passed away when she was very young, leaving her mother to raise the family in a world where resources were scarce and obstacles were plentiful. Yet, those who knew Tanisha early on recognized a quiet, resilient brilliance in her. Her family spoke of her as a young woman who refused to let her surroundings define her potential. She possessed an infectious smile and a natural charm, but her true defining characteristic was her disciplined dedication to her studies. While others her age navigated the social distractions of youth, Tanisha could often be found bent over her books, her focus absolute. Her family knew, with a certainty born of watching her daily efforts, that she was destined to stand out, to build a life of genuine accomplishment. In the spring of 2005, when Tanisha was 17 years old, she took a job at a local pizza restaurant to help support her family and save for her future education. It was here that she met Timothy Shepard. Timothy was 25 years old, handsome, charismatic, and possessing an air of confidence that immediately drew the attention of the younger coworkers. To a teenage girl who had grown up without a father, Timothy represented something stable, a slightly older, mature figure who seemed to possess the answers to the world she was so eager to conquer. Timothy was persistent. He asked Tanisha out repeatedly, brushing aside her initial hesitation with a gentle, patient charm. Eventually, she agreed to a date, and what began as a simple workplace friendship quickly blossomed into a serious relationship. Despite the 8-year age gap, Tanisha found herself deeply attached to Timothy. He became both a boyfriend and a mentor, a constant presence in her life, who promised to support her ambitions and protect her from the hardships she had known for so long. As the relationship grew more serious, Tanisha introduced Timothy to her family. Her mother and siblings were initially cautious, questioning why a 25-year-old man was so intent on dating a 17-year-old high school student. But Timothy was adept at winning people over. He made himself useful around her mother's house, fixing television sets, repairing computers, and presenting himself as a helpful, respectful partner. Slowly, the family's doubts dissolved, and they began to welcome him into their home like a son and a brother. The turning point in Tanisha's life came when she received a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. It was a monumental achievement, a validation of all the late nights spent studying in her crowded childhood home. The campus, located in College Station, was nearly a 2-hour drive from Houston. While Tanisha was excited to begin this new chapter, the physical distance placed an immediate strain on her relationship with Timothy. In the fall of 2006, Tanisha packed her bags and moved to the university. The transition was profound. For the first time, she was surrounded by peers who challenged her intellectually, and she began to experience a level of independence she had never known in Houston. Timothy, remaining behind in the city, found himself struggling with this new reality. The control he had easily maintained when she was a teenager living at home began to slip away. Just 3 months into her first semester, Timothy abruptly ended the relationship, briefly rekindling a romance with an old girlfriend. Tanisha was devastated. Her sister recalled her crying bitterly, unable to comprehend how the man who had promised her the world could discard her so easily. But Timothy's departure was short-lived. Realizing he had made a mistake, he drove down to the university to surprise her. They talked, they cried, and they decided to give their romance another chance. But the dynamic had shifted. Tanisha was no longer the quiet high school girl he had met at the pizza restaurant. She was growing, meeting new people, and exploring a world that did not revolve around Timothy Shepard. She was moving forward, while Timothy remained stagnant, anchored in his apartment in Houston, watching her progress with a growing, silent resentment. When Tanisha returned to Houston for spring break in March of 2007, she attempted to balance her time between Timothy and her high school friends. Timothy's jealousy, once masked as protective affection, began to show itself more clearly when she mentioned plans to attend a concert with her girlfriends. Timothy's responses became sharp, demanding to know why he had to schedule appointments to see his own girlfriend. A few days before the planned concert, Tanisha's sister Gayla experienced a vivid, unsettling dream. In the dream, she saw her sister being attacked by jealous girls, and her body could not be found. When Gayla shared this nightmare, Tanisha laughed it off, telling her sister to calm down and promising that she would be perfectly fine. It was a reassuring promise, but one that would soon haunt the family. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Gayla returned home from church to a phone call from her mother. The tone of her mother's voice was filled with a quiet, rising panic. Tanisha had not shown up for the concert. Her phone went unanswered, and none of her friends had seen her. 36 hours passed without a word. For a young woman who was meticulously responsible, who never went a day without checking in, this silence was deafening. The family filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th. Investigators immediately began tracing Tanisha's final known movements, which naturally led them to Timothy Shepard. Timothy agreed to come to the station for questioning. He presented a calm, cooperative front, explaining that he had picked Tanisha up early on Thursday morning, around 3 o'clock. He claimed that while they were driving back to his apartment, Tanisha received a call from a male classmate, a young man named Mark Marks. Timothy admitted this upset him, leading to a quiet confrontation once they arrived at the apartment. He told detectives that Tanisha refused to discuss the call, stating she was tired and wanted to sleep. The next morning, according to Timothy, the argument resumed. He claimed that Tanisha became frustrated, stormed out of the apartment and walked away on foot. That, he insisted, was the last time he ever saw her. The detectives listened carefully. Timothy's story was plausible, and a voluntary search of his apartment that afternoon revealed no obvious signs of a struggle or foul play. Lacking any physical evidence to hold him, the investigators returned his keys and allowed him to leave. Their attention then turned to Mark Marks, the young man whose early morning phone call had allegedly sparked the argument. Detectives located Mark and brought him in for questioning on Wednesday, March 21st. Mark was cooperative and visibly shaken to learn that Tanisha was missing. He admitted they had been dating casually for about a month, and that Tanisha had expressed a desire to end her relationship with Timothy, though she was anxious about hurting his feelings. Mark provided a solid alibi. He had been traveling with friends to a coastal resort at the time of her disappearance, an alibi that was quickly verified by independent witnesses. With Mark cleared and Timothy's apartment showing no immediate signs of a crime, investigators faced the grim possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after walking away from Timothy's home. They began canvassing the wooded area surrounding the apartment complex, calling in canine units to search the dense brush. As the search party worked through the woods, a local resident approached an officer with a curious detail. She reported hearing what sounded like gunshots coming from the tree line on the night Tanisha disappeared, followed by the sound of a car speeding away. The canine unit locked onto a scent deep in the brush, raising the detectives' anxieties to a fever pitch. But the discovery was anticlimactic, the remains of a small animal that had died of natural causes. While the physical search of the woods yielded nothing, other detectives were busy interviewing residents of Timothy's apartment complex. It was during these routine door-to-door inquiries that a bizarre, consistent narrative began to emerge. Multiple neighbors reported that on the Friday and Saturday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had been engaged in an unusual, intensive outdoor activity. He had set up 2 large barbecue grills on his patio and was cooking continuously, producing clouds of thick, heavy smoke that eventually prompted a neighbor to call the fire department. When first responders arrived to investigate the smoke, Timothy explained that he was preparing food for an upcoming church picnic, cooking meat for over 150 people. A firefighter noted seeing what appeared to be raw meat soaking in a bathtub filled with water inside the apartment, a detail that seemed eccentric but not criminal. However, another neighbor reported a different, more chilling detail. She described seeing Timothy pouring large amounts of liquid bleach onto his concrete patio, scrubbing the surface with intensity that seemed unnatural. The scent of the chemical was so overwhelming that it burned her eyes from several yards away. These disparate pieces of information began to coalesce into a dark, incomprehensible picture. The intensity of the cleaning, the continuous barbecuing, and the sudden disappearance of a young woman who had wanted to end her relationship all pointed back to the quiet, helpful young man who fixed television sets for his girlfriend's mother. Desperate for answers, Tanisha's family contacted a prominent community activist, hoping his influence might force a breakthrough. The activist, familiar with the case, arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. Sensing that Timothy was under immense psychological pressure, the advocate spoke to him quietly, urging him to look him in the eye and tell the truth. The confrontation in the small apartment bathroom was the catalyst that broke the silence. Under the weight of his own actions, Timothy's composed facade crumbled. He confessed that when Tanisha tried to leave, he flew into a jealous rage and strangled her. He then claimed he had placed her body in a nearby dumpster. The activist immediately contacted investigator Miller. The police, accompanied by the activist and a distraught Timothy, rushed to the apartment complex to secure the dumpster. But as they discovered, the bin had been emptied by municipal waste trucks earlier that week. The realization was devastating. In a city the size of Houston, a body deposited into the waste management system would quickly be lost in a landfill containing thousands of tons of refuse. A search of that scale would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and offer no guarantee of recovery. In a heartbreaking show of dignity, Tanisha's mother asked the authorities not to exhaust public resources on a hopeless search, choosing instead to focus on securing justice through the evidence that remained. And that evidence, though microscopic, was powerful. Forensic teams returned to Timothy's apartment, this time utilizing advanced chemical agents and specialized light sources. In the kitchen, beneath the modern convenience of the garbage disposal, they discovered tiny, charred bone fragments. A forensic dentist later identified a small piece of enamel recovered from the drain as belonging to one of Tanisha's teeth. Outside, near the patio where the grills had burned for days, investigators recovered additional ash and bone fragments. The truth of what had occurred in that apartment was far more horrific than anyone had dared to imagine. Timothy Shepard had not only taken Tanisha's life, he had attempted to erase her very existence using the tools of a mundane backyard domesticity. The trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard began on September 29, 2008. The prosecution faced the immense hurdle of proving a murder charge without a complete body, relying instead on circumstantial evidence, the forensic tooth fragment, and the testimony of those who had witnessed Timothy's actions. Among the state's most compelling witnesses was Timothy's own cousin, who testified that Timothy had once remarked, in a moment of casual conversation, that if a woman ever tried to leave him, he would destroy her in a way that left no trace. The community advocate testified as well, recounting the quiet confession in the bathroom. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand in his own defense, attempting to frame the tragedy as an accident. He claimed that Tanisha had attacked him with a small knife during their argument, and that he had reacted in self-defense, blacking out, and awakening to find her lifeless. He presented photographs of small cuts on his hands as proof of his struggle. But when the prosecution questioned him about his actions after her death, his attempt to find sympathy dissolved. When asked if he had placed her remains on a barbecue pit, Timothy corrected the prosecutor with a chilling, detached precision, stating that he had used a smoker instead. The jury was unmoved by his claims of self-defense. They returned a verdict of guilty, and Timothy Shepard was sentenced to 99 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. For Tanisha's family, the verdict offered a solemn measure of peace, though no court could restore the bright future that had been so cruelly extinguished. Tanisha Stewart had risen above the hardships of her youth, driven by a quiet desire to make something of her life, only to fall victim to the oldest and most tragic of human failures, a small man's inability to let a bright star shine on her own. Chapter 2: Shadows Beneath the Pulpit. The winter mornings in Raleigh, North Carolina, are often crisp and clear, the cold air keeping people hurried as they move from their warm homes to their vehicles. On Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, at approximately 7:30 in the morning, the routine commute along Interstate 540 was interrupted by an unusual sight. Several drivers traveling westbound noticed a shape lying in the tall grass just off the shoulder of the road. It was motionless, partially obscured by the frost-covered winter brush. As the first emergency vehicles arrived, the reality of the situation became clear. A young woman was lying on her side in the grass. She was dressed in casual clothes, but she was not a stranded pedestrian, nor had she been the victim of a traffic accident. The evidence of a violent, personal assault was written clearly across her body. She had been stabbed repeatedly, her wounds concentrated around her face, neck, and torso. Among the many commuters delayed by the emerging crime scene was Darren Curtis. As he slowly drove past the flashing blue lights, he noticed a blue tarp covering the form in the grass. He felt a modern traveler's passing sympathy for the tragedy, but continued driving. However, less than half a mile further down the highway, his sympathy turned to sharp, cold panic. Parked on the shoulder of the road was a white passenger car, its hazard light silent, its model and license plate identical to the vehicle driven by his wife, Latrice. Darren pulled over, his mind racing as he ran back toward the police officers, securing the scene. Within moments, his worst fears were realized. The young woman lying in the grass was indeed his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis. To those who knew Latrice, her death was an impossible concept to accept. She had grown up in a warm, protective household, the only daughter in a family of several brothers. She was a young woman of striking beauty, possessing a warm, open personality that made friends easily, despite her active social life. Latrice was deeply committed to her education, studying business administration at North Carolina Central University in Durham. It was during her early college years that she met Darren Curtis, a former National Guard soldier who was studying accounting. Darren was respectful, disciplined, and quickly earned the approval of Latrice's protective family. The couple fell deeply in love and were married in a beautiful ceremony just 9 months prior to that cold January morning. They had recently moved into a quiet apartment, looking forward to a life of shared professional success and family devotion. Now, that promising future lay shattered on the side of a highway. Investigators from the Wake County Sheriff's Office began the painstaking process of gathering evidence. An autopsy revealed that Latrice had fought desperately for her life, her hands bearing defensive wounds. She had been stabbed nearly 40 times, her carotid artery and vocal cords severed in an attack that was marked by an extraordinary level of rage. The medical examiner also made a significant discovery. A condom was recovered from her body, showing no signs of trauma that would suggest a typical sexual assault. The focus initially fell upon Darren Curtis, the husband who had arrived at the scene so soon after the body's discovery. Detectives examined Darren's hands and arms for scratches or bruises, finding nothing but the smooth skin of a man who had not been in a physical struggle. A search of the couple's apartment and Darren's personal vehicle revealed no trace of blood or evidence of a crime. Darren's alibi was straightforward. He had gone to sleep around 11:30 the previous evening after receiving a brief phone call from Latrice, who explained she was running late from her studies and was stopping to get food. When Darren awoke the next morning, he tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. Assuming she had stayed the night with her family, he dressed and left for work, only to encounter the crime scene on his daily commute. With no physical evidence linking Darren to the crime, investigators turned to a different source of information, the couple's cell phone records. The records for Latrice's phone revealed a high volume of communication in the hours leading up to her death, while she had indeed spoken to her husband around 10 o'clock. She had also received and made several calls around midnight to a number registered to a young man named Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was a prominent figure on the university campus. He was a talented athlete, a basketball player with aspirations of entering the National Basketball Association. He was handsome, popular, and known to be dating a young woman named Velma Newton. 2 days after the discovery of Latrice's body, Stephen walked into the sheriff's office. He was not alone. He was accompanied by his roommate, a 43-year-old local minister named Robert Reeves. Reeves was a well-known figure in the Durham community, a charismatic preacher who often spoke at youth events and managed a local ministry. He had taken Stephen in as a tenant, renting him a basement apartment in his home to help the young athlete through a period of financial difficulty. In the interview room, Stephen initially claimed that his relationship with Latrice was strictly academic, a simple friendship between classmates who occasionally studied together. But when confronted with the forensic evidence of the condom and the late-night phone logs, Stephen's composure faltered. He admitted that they had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. He explained that on the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his apartment. During their intimate encounter, the condom had become lodged inside her, and, despite their efforts, they could not retrieve it. Latrice left his home around 10 o'clock, frustrated and anxious about returning home to her husband with the physical evidence of her infidelity still present. Stephen claimed that after she left, he drove to his girlfriend Velma's apartment to clear his mind, arriving around 10:30. He stated that during the midnight hours, Latrice called him repeatedly, frantic about the possibility of becoming pregnant. He insisted that he had nothing to do with her death, a statement that his girlfriend Velma later supported by confirming his arrival time at her home. However, the medical examiner placed the time of death between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, a window that left Stephen's alibi incomplete. Furthermore, investigators learned from Velma that both she and Stephen had been receiving anonymous, threatening phone calls for several weeks, warning Stephen to end his various romantic associations. On one occasion, Stephen had discovered all 4 tires on his vehicle had been slashed while parked outside Velma's apartment. As detectives worked to verify these details, they received a crucial call from a state trooper. The trooper reported that at approximately 1:30 on the morning of the murder, he had stopped to investigate a disabled vehicle parked on the eastbound shoulder of Interstate 540, very close to where Latrice's body was later found. The vehicle's hazard lights were flashing, but the interior was empty. When the trooper ran the registration, the vehicle came Back to Pastor Robert Reeves. The inclusion of the pastor's vehicle at the scene of the crime shifted the direction of the investigation. Detectives summoned Robert Reeves back to the station. Reeves was cooperative, explaining that while the car was registered to him, Stephen Randolph had regular access to the keys and often borrowed it for personal errands. He claimed that he had spent the evening of January 29th attending a church service, returning home around 11:30, and had not driven his vehicle that night. But when investigators interviewed Reeves' sister, who attended the same church, she stated that she had not seen her brother at the service. Furthermore, detectives noticed several deep scratches on the pastor's arms. Reeves dismissed them, explaining he had scraped his arms while helping Stephen move a heavy desk. Earlier that week, when Stephen was questioned about this incident, he denied that any such move had occurred or that the pastor had been injured in his presence. The true nature of the household dynamic began to emerge when Stephen revealed a series of bizarre personal encounters with the minister. He claimed that Reeves had grown increasingly intrusive, asking detailed, highly personal questions about his romantic life. On one occasion, the pastor had suggested that